Question: have you ever had dinner for breakfast? Now, I've heard about breakfast for dinner, but dinner for breakfast. Back in a minute. Hi, it's Jan from New York City. How you doing today? Like to help people save money. Hope that everybody's doing well. Oftentimes, we've heard the expression and have actually implemented it. All of us probably listening, having breakfast for dinner, whereby which you may decide to make some eggs or some toast with maybe some cream cheese or some toasted bagel and lox, and just be happy at that. Just call it a day. But how many of you out there have ever done a reverse engineer? What do I mean? Having dinner for breakfast. What? Some people think that that sounds like an outlandish thing. Let me tell you something. If you have seen my recent video, now I've got to explain something. Let's go back to my meatloaf recipe, of which you heard about a couple of weeks back. I did something very spontaneous. I sometimes when I do the most spontaneous things, can I tell you, it comes out the best. I don't know why, but it just happens to work out. So I happen to have, when you have a few straggler tater tots sitting in the freezer, not quite enough to just, do too much with, but enough to make a little change. And this is what I want to point out. If you look to some of your traditional dinner foods, you may have a little bit or somewhat of it left over. Who's to stop you from using it for breakfast? Now, let's go back to the meatloaf. Now, the meatloaf recent recipe that I had given. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you could always look it up, or I could always hook up the video in the description later. But I decided I like to make Sunday cook my meatloaf day. Okay. Especially the way I've been doing it, the dump easy way in one loaf pan. That way I don't have a ton of cleanup. I have other things to do on a Sunday like rest. Anyway, make a long story short, I said, I had a handful, about 10. I would say it was either 10 or 12 tater tots. So what I did was I made my meatloaf mixture halfway. Then I inserted 10 or 12 tater tots, like a couple in a row, like two, 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 across the whole loaf pan. Then I put the remaining meat mixture over that, sort of like a cap over it, and I patted it down gently. You don't impact meat too tightly because you're going to end up with like a tough consistency, believe it or not. So I inserted these tater tots. Actually, they were frozen. I didn't defrost them. I did nothing to them. Although, if you wish, you can defrost your tater tots. Keep in mind that because they were frozen, it slows down the cooking process a little bit, which means you're going to have to leave your meatloaf in your oven a little bit longer. Normally, I keep my meatloaf in the oven about 45 minutes. In this case, because the tater tots are in it, I left it in at about 1 hour. Now, I strongly suggest you check your situation with your meatloaf if you do this. All right. So having said that, anywhere from 50 minutes to an hour on, check the doneness of your meatloaf. Oh my word. That meatloaf was, I thought I topped it off like with a great meatloaf using the condensed tomato soup, of which was still in the mixture. But now I bumped this thing up to the next level. And can I tell you, this feeds an army. Putting in just a simple ingredient, 10 to 12 tater tots, expanded my shareability of that meatloaf because I had company. That day, and I sliced it up, and in its original form. And the folks eating it were like really like flipping out how something so simple, it's like having like your mashed potatoes inside of your meatloaf. In an easy way without going berserk about it. So it's funny. Sometimes necessity is the mother of invention. What do I mean by necessity? In that case, I wanted to utilize those straggler, if you will, tater tots just taking up space in my freezer. So this was really like the tomato condensed soup was a match made in heaven. And guess what? The shareability, it is so filling. Now let's get to the breakfast part. You're probably saying, yeah, but we're talking about dinner for breakfast. Okay, okay. If you have not seen the video yet, I strongly suggest you do. I made the next day, the next morning, I made what I call meatloaf hash. Now let's think about corned beef hash for a minute. What's one of the ingredients in your typical corned beef hash? Potatoes, right? Okay. In this case, you already added the tater tots to your meatloaf. So that's already incorporated. So I said, I want something, as usual, I like to be a little different. So I wanted some dinner for breakfast. So what I did, and you see it in the video, I sliced up a piece of that meatloaf that has the potatoes in it. And all I did was break it down into smaller pieces and heated it up. It just took like about 5 minutes to heat up. The potatoes are already incorporated in the meatloaf. So effectively, I created meatloaf hash. Guess what? If you have a bunch of people and they want some eggs to go with it, imagine your own homemade beef hash on the fly, 1, 2, 3, and you make a couple of eggs over easy or sunny side up or scramble, whatever method you want to use, you can use. And if you don't want to do this as a breakfast idea, you most certainly can consider just hanging on to your do-over meatloaf. Remember, we don't like to call leftovers. Oh, just saying, just saying. But do-over does sound better. As a matter of fact, a couple of my commenters said they like to hear me call it a do-over instead of a leftover. They like that I use that phrase. It does make a difference because actually, in actuality, it is a do-over. All right. Having said that, so this is very interchangeable. So what you can do, let's say you had the meatloaf the night before. Okay. So what you could do with the same meatloaf with the potatoes incorporated in it, you could do it for dinner as a meatloaf hash with a couple of eggs on the side. You're getting a wonderfully nutritious meal, filling. Just if you want, you could either do a fruit or a vegetable on the side. Some people like to have a green. Some people rather have, the weather is now starting to get a little warm and you're only heating it up for 5 minutes. So just imagine that with a nice piece of melon on the side or whatever fruit. I like to have frozen grapes. Frozen grapes are a great idea. Just saying, just saying. So the bottom line is this. In answer to the original question, can you have dinner for breakfast? Yeah. And not only can you have dinner for breakfast, but that dinner for breakfast can turn into the choice of another dinner for another night. I have never gotten so much value out of meatloaf ever. And I mean ever. Hey, let me know in the comments section below if you like this idea, if you'll consider trying this idea, or if you've done a similar thing. I love to hear about what you might throw into a meatloaf extra. This is interesting. I used to put in peas and carrots. My mom loved when I did that too. All right, there you go. In the meantime, I really appreciate all of your time. I'm going to say goodbye with a simple outro and be right back. By the way, if you found value in this video, don't forget to smash down the like button. If you know of someone who could use this video for a meal idea, don't forget to share the video. And if you aren't a subscriber to this channel, what are you waiting for? Have an amazing, fantastic day. Take good care now. Bye-bye.